I suppose not being able to see the end of the week, sometimes the end of tomorrow, how you're going to survive, having to always try and make do. Very good at repurposing. However, it's a bit of a bitter taste when the kids want something and you know if you had just a bit more cash, it would be an easy yes. And it's usually, I'm really sorry.
Hardship means to me like just being rock bottom, you know, on your arse, you know, with nowhere to get forward or no outlook on life. And poverty, there's so many different types of poverty, aren't there? You know, but if you're talking about money, and when you're on your arse, it's hard to find a job, it's hard to get work, it's hard to even get yourself set up on the social services, isn't it? All benefits and that nature.
I just have to look around my community to see the deterioration of the community where I live. Fly tipping, not a lot of people in the streets. You can physically feel the poverty, and you can see the poverty, like broken toys. The community just feels really, 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 really different to when I started living in Shelton in 1986.
Limiting people's opportunities, whether that's simple things as food, being able to eat healthily, and down to job opportunities and employment also as well. Education is a massive one as well.
I guess people think of it as financially, but there's more than that. You know, it's one thing being short of money, which most people are occasionally, if not all the time, but there's a bigger picture really. People can be socially impoverished, like, you know, isolated, don't go out. Obviously, it's rough without enough money, and everything's going through the roof now. So anyone who's, well, no one's getting a pay rise, are they, I guess, and it's just, I think we're going to see a lot more of it, aren't we? It's going to increase now.
When I was younger, I came from a large family, and my dad supported us when we were younger, and my mum was at home, so there was one of 5 of us. Now, in my view, we were in poverty, but looking back now, there was things that we could do about it. So, although we didn't have a lot of money or income, we used to get clothes donated to us, so we were very lucky in that respect. And we used to eat, we never went hungry, but we ate a basic diet.
Having a poor diet growing up and not having food what other kids were having. I remember getting invited around the next door neighbours once for spaghetti bolognese. You know, that was so alien to me. That was so new. You know, we're talking in the mid-80s here, and I never heard of that before, because our diet was sort of beans on toast or spaghetti hoops on toast.
People having to make really difficult choices on a day-to-day basis. I think it means it's real life for lots of people, and I think it's also sometimes seen as something that's out there and separate to some people's lives, but actually it's probably much closer, I think, to all of us than we think.
Christmas, for instance, kids expect, you know, top of the range, shiny new things, and you can't always get that. You have to get the cheaper option, or you have to get the cheaper option when you go to the supermarket rather than, you know, the smart price stuff rather than the stuff that actually tastes nice, you know.
I think it's that people sometimes feel trapped, they feel stuck, and actually having that opportunity to chat to somebody makes that massive difference. I think not having that ability to chat and speak to people, especially in the last 2 years, has had a massive impact on people, never mind with lockdown and isolation, but also experiencing poverty and hardship. It makes a huge impact on people's mental health.
When I was a kid, I didn't really think about it at the time, but it was the difference between taking your PE kit to school in a Quick Save bag or a Puma bag. And you don't think about it when you're a kid, but when you get older, you do actually realise that these things happen.
I think over the last couple of years, it means more because I found out more about it. and it also means more because people are experiencing more of it. So as time goes on and it gets worse, some of the issues get more serious, because you can put up with things for a while, but when it doesn't improve and then other things come along, like the cost of fuel, for example, that affects everybody, it's almost like being in a pit, and it just keeps making the pit a bit deeper and a bit harder to get out of.
Throughout my life, I've lived either on or underneath that breadline, that perceived breadline, and I've either been in social care, social housing, I've been street homeless, but they're all different stories. My story that I kind of want to focus on is the fact that I came from a working class background, a working class family where both my parents were working, but I was still having to live with hand-me-down clothes. I was still having to eat the Sainsbury's own brand, the Tesco two-stripe, Tesco Saver stuff all the time, and I was getting it's all the stigma that was regarding that you go to school wearing the not the name trainers, the not the named clothes, and you get ridiculed, you get bullied for it, and it's kind of not understanding why you're getting bullied. Like I say, when I was a kid, I suppose this is the story for quite a few people, that you just thought kids are a bit mean, kids are just bullying, they just don't like me for a person, they don't like who I am, but it's society, isn't it? It's society's perceived value of being able to afford these things, being able to do these things, and then what those kids who were bullying me probably didn't understand is their parents probably had to do without to buy them those things.
Waking in the morning to see vapour on the air, walking into the kitchen to see the cupboard almost bare. The carpet that needs replacing will have to remain threadbare. The many times you've had to say no when the kids want to go here or there. No, we can't afford that, you'll just have to make do. I know other kids show off their shiny new toys, but lots of expensive gifts. No, just won't happen for you. No holiday again this year. The closest you will get to that is the garden with a pool, walks to the park or to the lake, and maybe the carnival, but only if we pay the bills late. Of course you don't know, you're just being mean when you say no. I tell them they're lucky. There are those that have less. We gave them the best we could, but that put us into debt. Hardship feels like playing catch up, always a few steps behind, never having quite enough, and always having to find.
It's made me feel that I'm a second-class citizen, that I'm not worthy of being in society because of the ignorance of mental health and the discrimination that people face with mental health diagnoses and labels. It's almost as though like we're discarded by society and our values and opinions don't mean anything.
The amount of money to live on at one time was a bit like being homeless, but in a house, if that makes sense, with no money for gas as much such really. I guess you can get fed and you can make sure you eat something and that, but no money for gas, etc. It just becomes a miserable existence really.
It's kind of related both, isn't it? The mental health and poverty. So because I was having mental health issues, I ended up being homeless, and I left my education and I basically had to live in a women's hostel. So, when I was getting the help financially from the government, it was like I was on the lowest financial help. And because you're struggling so hard with money, then the addiction kicks off even harder, isn't it? Because you don't have the funds to feed yourself. So then it just became like one feeding the other.
My poverty was brought about not through the lack of money, if anything, but through too much. Because I went into the drugs and alcohol, and that's when it hit me rock bottom.
It affected me because lack of sleep when I'm thinking a lot. So and being a lone parent as well, you tend to think a lot, like when am I gonna have the next meal? you know, how is it affecting my children's well-being as well? Because I wouldn't want to see my kids seeing me, you know, in a state like I can't sleep, I can't be able to provide them with anything, like the basic necessities. Yeah.
You sort of put yourself into the margins of society rather than being included with society. So yeah, I think that's a massive one. Positive relationships, connections is huge. But yeah, like I say, more grassroots organisations and communities getting together will help with that, and they can build on that.
Address all aspects of poverty and not just give a one solution fits all. You know, people need to have choices, and they need to have guidance.
Everybody in government to have to live 1 year on, like somebody on universal credit, not a week like they've done on TV, 1 year, because then they would truly understand what poverty and hardship is.
I'd say training and education on the reduce of stigma regarding all these people living in poverty, because that is not helping the case anyway. Because if you're stigmatised and told you one thing, then sometimes you're just going to hit that random big red effort button and carry on being that one thing.
There's massive inequality in pay. Stop spending so much on arms, and just take care of everybody instead of, it's just greed, and people have just got the amounts of money they'll never spend, and they're deciding to fly into space with it. And then you see adverts on the television saying these kids have got pneumonia, and then they need £2 a month, I think, or a week will pay for antibiotics for them. And I'm thinking, you know,
for people with experience of hardship to have a say in how that's addressed, and for those stories to be listened to and taken seriously.
Make funding more accessible and services, you know, where you got like your life lived experiences to share with other people who are going through a similar sort of scenario themselves. And, you know, if they could do that and get this place set up and going, you know, where people like myself and others with the lived experience could pass that on in all elements and aspects. Because like me personally, I was a bricklayer builder, you know, and I mean, I've spoke about it a few times. It's like, if you could just get a centre, you know, where you could take people who've been in and out of jail with drug and alcohol issues, who've got these skills and trades, train them up to train others up, and
for those that have, to be able to see from the perspective that those that don't.
From a policy making and government point of view, the conversation around the social aspect of poverty and hardship and the impacts of things like different disadvantage are taken seriously, are talked about on the same level as materialistic impacts are spoken about.
Everyone, you know, is different, and it needs to be adapted, like the finances and like the support just needs to, you know, each person needs to be looked more as an individual rather than just, just a number, because I was just a number to them and they didn't care what happens to me on the street, you know. So
just somebody to pat on your back and just say things will be all right, don't worry, we can go through this together. That's it.
I mean, this minimum wage farce, it's never enough for anyone who works on minimum wage.
Needy, poverty, poor are words people are poor. We're skint, we're broke, brassic, no peas. Out of dosh, need a note. Things are tight, a bit tricky. Where's a quid? And I quote, money's too tight to mention in many a home. Not enough to go round, no chance of a loan. Phones on the fritz, you see action to sanction. We all gotta eat. Volunteers bridge lack of action by those holding coin or sat on mountains of waste. Shame on the system, make change now with much haste.